Welcome to the DX Today podcast, your daily deep dive into the AI ecosystem. I'm Chris, and joining me as always is Laura.
Thanks, Chris, and I am genuinely thrilled about today's topic because it represents one of those quiet shifts that completely changes how millions of people will interact with the internet every single day, and yet it slipped by with surprisingly little fanfare in the mainstream coverage.
So let's set the stage for everyone listening, because I suspect a lot of people missed this announcement amid all the other noise coming out of the conference season we have had this year.
Absolutely. So at Google I/O 2026, the company unveiled what they are calling information agents, and the public rollout actually began on June 12th to a specific tier of their paying subscribers.
Okay, information agents is one of those names that sounds impressive, but tells you almost nothing concrete. So help me understand what these things actually do in plain, practical, everyday terms for a normal user.
Great question. So think of it this way. Instead of you going to Google and typing a search whenever you want something, you tell Google once to watch a topic for you, and it monitors the entire web around the clock.
So it is essentially flipping the entire model of search on its head. Because for more than 2 decades, the deal has been that you go to the search box whenever you happen to have a question.
Exactly, and that is precisely why I think this matters so much. Because these agents are persistent background processes that keep working on your behalf even while you are asleep or completely busy with other things.
Let me make sure I have the mechanics right, because the how matters as much as the what. So walk me through exactly what a person does to create one of these agents inside the product.
It is surprisingly simple. So inside what Google calls AI mode, you just describe what you want. Using natural phrases like, keep me updated on something, or alert me when a specific event finally happens in the world.
And once you have set that up, what is the agent actually reaching out and looking at? Because the web is enormous, and not all of it is equally trustworthy or even remotely relevant to your question.
So Google says the agent looks across blogs, news sites, and social posts, and it also pulls the freshest real-time data, things like finance numbers, shopping prices, and live sports information, then watches all of it for changes.
That is a genuinely broad sweep of sources, and I imagine the real magic, or maybe the real risk, is in how it decides what is actually worth interrupting your day with a notification about.
That is the heart of it, because rather than dumping raw links on you, the agent sends an intelligent, synthesized update that summarizes what changed, and it can even offer to take a follow-up action for you.
Give me some concrete examples here, because I think people understand abstract capabilities far better when they can picture a specific moment in their own life where this would genuinely save them time or stress.
Happily, so imagine you are hunting for a flight and you ask the agent to watch the price. Or you are job searching and want alerts the instant new openings appear in your specific role and city.
Those are great because they are the exact kinds of tedious, repetitive checking that people do manually right now. Refreshing the same airline page or job board 10 times a day, hoping something finally changed.
Precisely, and other examples Google highlighted include tracking a product launch you are excited about, monitoring housing listings in a competitive market, or following a developing news story without obsessively refreshing your feed every 15 minutes.
Now, something is nagging at me, because this idea of being notified when the web changes is not entirely brand new. And I want you to help me understand what is genuinely different this time around.
That is such an important point to raise, because Google alerts in the old world of RSS feeds let you track keywords for years. So, on the surface, this can feel like a familiar idea wearing a fancier coat.
Right, so what is the actual leap forward here? Because if this is just Google Alerts with a nicer interface, then frankly, I'm not sure it deserves the breathless excitement it has been generating online.
The leap is comprehension and synthesis, because the old tools simply matched a keyword and forwarded a raw link, whereas these agents actually read, understand, compare, and summarize what changed, then judge whether it is even worth telling you.
Now I have to play devil's advocate here, because this sounds wonderful in a demo, but who actually has access to it today? And what is this going to cost the average curious person who wants it?
Fair challenge. So right now it is limited to Google's AI Ultra subscribers, which is their most expensive premium tier, although it is available across all AI mode languages and markets for those particular users.
So this is very much a premium, top-of-the-stack feature at launch, which tells me Google sees autonomous monitoring as something valuable enough to gate behind their highest paid plan rather than giving it away broadly.
That is a sharp read, and Google has said it will expand to AI Pro subscribers later this summer. So the access will widen, but notice they are deliberately not putting this in the free tier yet.
That pricing choice actually tells a really interesting strategic story, Because for Google's entire history search has been free and supported by advertising. And now the most advanced version is something you explicitly pay a subscription for.
You just put your finger on the single most important business question in this whole space. Because if search becomes proactive and agent-driven, the classic model of showing you 10 blue links and ads starts to wobble.
Right, so let's actually sit in that tension for a moment. Because the entire economics of the open web were built on people clicking through from search results to publishers, advertisers, and online stores every single day.
And that is the part that keeps publishers and retailers up at night. Because if an agent synthesizes an answer and only occasionally sends you onward, the flow of traffic that funds huge swaths of the internet changes shape.
So in a sense, Google is potentially disrupting the very ecosystem that it spent 25 years building and profiting from, which is a fascinating and slightly precarious position for any company to deliberately put itself into.
It really is, and I think Google knows it is walking a tightrope, which is why these agents still surface sources and offer to take you to the original page, trying to keep some of that traffic alive.
Let's talk about the competitive picture, because Google obviously is not operating in a vacuum here, and several other major players have been pushing hard on this exact idea of agents that act on your behalf.
That is so true, because the entire industry has converged on agents as the next frontier this year, with rivals building assistants that browse, monitor, and act. So Google is racing to defend its core search territory.
And that defensive framing feels important to name, because search is the crown jewel of Google's business. So any technology that could let a competitor intercept user questions before they reach Google is an existential kind of threat.
Exactly, and proactive agents are arguably the most dangerous version of that threat because whoever owns the agent that watches the web for you effectively owns the relationship and the attention that used to belong to the search box.
Let me pivot us to the concerns side, because anything that runs constantly in the background watching the web on your behalf raises some pretty serious questions about privacy, accuracy, and how much we should trust it.
Those concerns are completely valid, and I would start with accuracy, because a synthesized summary is only as good as its sources. And if the agent misreads a blog post or a rumor, it confidently delivers that mistake.
That is a real worry, because there is a meaningful psychological difference between a wrong answer you actively went looking for and a wrong answer that arrives unprompted as a confident notification on your phone screen.
Yes, and the unprompted nature changes the trust dynamic entirely because a push notification carries an implicit authority, almost like the system is telling you this is important enough that we decided to interrupt your day for it.
And then there is the privacy dimension, because for an agent to monitor things you care about, it has to hold a persistent model of your interests, your searches, and the topics you are quietly watching over time.
That is a profound shift because a traditional search is ephemeral and forgotten. But a standing agent is, by definition, a durable record of your curiosities, your plans, and sometimes the things you are not ready to tell anyone.
So we are trading convenience for a much deeper and more continuous data relationship with Google, which is a trade-off that I think a lot of people will accept happily without ever fully thinking it through.
And that is exactly why conversations like this one matter, because the technology is genuinely useful, and I'm not here to fearmonger. But informed consent means actually understanding what you are handing over in exchange for the magic.
Let's zoom out and talk about what this signals for the broader direction of AI products, because I suspect information agents are an early example of a pattern we are going to see absolutely everywhere very soon.
I completely agree, because the underlying shift is from AI that responds when summoned to AI that operates continuously and proactively. And once people taste that convenience in search, they will start expecting it in every single app.
That is a big claim, so defend it for me, because plenty of features get demoed at conferences with great fanfare and then quietly disappear when it turns out real people do not actually change their habits.
That is a totally fair challenge, but I would point to the specific use cases, because price tracking, job alerts, and news monitoring are things people already do manually, so the agent is automating an existing, proven, painful behavior.
That distinction is really persuasive, because the products that stick are usually the ones that remove friction from something people already do, rather than the ones trying to invent a brand new behavior from scratch.
Exactly. And that is why I think this particular feature has real staying power. Because it is not asking anyone to change what they want, it is just quietly doing the boring checking work on their behalf instead.
Before we wrap, I want to ask you the harder question, which is what could actually go wrong at scale if hundreds of millions of these always-on agents are eventually watching the web simultaneously every day?
That is a fascinating systems question because at scale, you have countless agents constantly crawling and rechecking sources, which raises real questions about server load, about how smaller websites absorb that relentless traffic, and about who ultimately ends up paying for all of that extra bandwidth and infrastructure over time.
And there's a feedback loop lurking in there too. Because if agents increasingly read content that other agents and AI systems generated, you can imagine the quality of the underlying information slowly degrading in a self-referential spiral.
That is a genuinely unsettling possibility, and it is one of the reasons I keep saying that the source attribution and the human-in-the-loop design choices Google makes here are going to matter enormously over the next few years.
So if you had to summarize the single most important takeaway for our listeners today, what is the one thing you would want them to remember about Google's move into these always-on information agents?
I would say this: search is quietly transforming from a place you visit into a service that works for you continuously, and whoever wins that proactive layer may end up shaping how we all encounter information itself.
That is a perfect place to land because it reframes this from a small product update into what it really is, which is an early glimpse of a fundamentally different and far more proactive relationship with the technology that quietly mediates almost everything we do online today.
Couldn't agree more. And my advice to everyone listening is to pay attention to these agentic features as they roll out. Try them thoughtfully and stay curious about both the convenience they offer and the trade-offs they quietly carry.
That's all for today's episode of the DX Today podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.